Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to discuss how Sir Charles Elliot describes the Nilotic groups of people as having a more Caucasian physique or maybe body shape than, say, the Bantu speaking groups and probably the other groups. And I found that to be so interesting. To him, the Nilotic groups seemed to have a physical structure that he thought was very close to the Caucasian physical structure. And of course, I need to point out that Sir Charles Elliot was a very racist man. And to him, everything seems to have needed to be interpreted through the lens of race. And he makes another argument in that part of the book where he seems to be implying that the Nilotic groups of people are not what you can consider to be Negroes. And that leaves you wondering again, and I've said this in another video, what does the word Negro, what did the word Negro actually mean to him? Because the way he uses it, he excludes different groups from it in a way that you struggle to understand what was the word, or what was the meaning of the word in the way you used it. Now, Sir Charles Elliot was what was called the British Commissioner for East Africa. He was the highest ranking, we can say, British officer on the land that was known as the East Africa Protectorate before it became officially a colony. And the East Africa Protectorate is the land that later on became the Kenyan colony and, of course, later on the Republic of Kenya. Now, he served in that office from 1902 to 1904, then he resigned. Then he published this book in 1905. Now, this is a very detailed and comprehensive book. He did a good job, we can say, despite the fact that it has a very racist angle of looking, or it has a very racist way of looking, or it is based on very racist perspective. It's still a very detailed work. We can say he did a very good job at trying to cover most of the things that will interest someone, maybe most likely a British during that time, not an African like me. But today we read it because it's very interesting to see the perspective of these people 100 years ago or more than 100 years ago. Now, this book, of course, covers the geography, the climate, the history of the East Africa Protectorate and the people. And this is where now this comes up. It talks about the Bantu people, then it talks about the Somali, the so-called, he called them the Hamitic people, Somali and the Oromo. And then, of course, it discusses now the Nilotic people. And this is what he says in that section of the book. He says, the significance of the name Nilotic as applied to certain tribes in the East Africa Protectorate must not be unduly pressed. It merely means that these tribes are connected with other tribes which now live on the southern Nile, but the evidence before us is hardly sufficient to prove that the tribes on the Nile should be regarded as homogeneous unit, or that those which hang together with one another and with the tribes of East Africa have any special claim to be regarded as the characteristic population of the river banks. It would seem that the Mahdi, who are one of the main elements in the riparian population between Gondokoro, and Gondokoro, I guess this is Southern Sudan, and Wadelai, I think also in South Sudan, belong to another stock, at least linguistically, with possible West African affinities, and the East Africa tribes show indications of two separate subgroups. The Maasai are linguistically most allied to the Bari and Latuka, living at the present in the neighborhood of Gondokoro, which I think is South Sudan, while the Nilotic Avirondo or the Jaluo are clearly connected with the Acholi, dwelling to the northeast of Lake Albert. And apparently both are more distantly related to the Dinka and Shilluk, who inhabit the country north of Gondokoro on the banks of the Sobat. These relationships may be regarded as fairly certain, as they are based on the triple bond of resemblance in physique, language, and customs. Physically, the Nilotes are generally tall, thin men with features which are not characteristically Negro and often almost Caucasian. So, to him, the Nilotic are not close to the Negro. They are more, in the look at least, to the Caucasian. And of course, the Caucasian are Europeans, of course, and Europeans, and maybe we can say, you can put in Arabs and Indians, some, or at least some part of that population. And he's speaking in terms of body physique, not of course the color, but body physique. Now, that also, of course, that left me wondering, what does the word Negro mean, according to what he understood or how he used it, because he uses the word and then excludes people from that group without defining what a Negro is actually. Those are my random thoughts.